Afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give everyone a few moments to join the webinar and then we'll get started. Great. Well, thank you for joining and welcome to our webinar where we're going to be discussing the importance of beneficiaries and estate planning. My name's Gemma Ballantyne and I'm an account specialist at Brighter Super. Part of my role is meeting with members on a regular basis, and a big part of the discussions I have is the importance of understanding options for nominating a beneficiary in your superannuation account. It's one of the popular topics at seminars as well, and I hope by the end of the session you'll have gained a further understanding about beneficiaries and estate planning. Brighter Super acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting today and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We acknowledge and celebrate the continuation of a living culture that has a unique role in this region. It's important to understand that the information and the examples contained in this presentation are general in nature and have been prepared without taking into account your individual objectives or financial circumstances. So it's important when making decisions about your superannuation that you obtain the relevant product disclosure statement and target market determination and consider your personal circumstances. You can get these documents and the financial services guide from the Brighter Super website. So today's presentation will run for about 30 minutes. Some of you submitted questions already, which we've tried to incorporate into the presentation. And you can also post questions in the Q&A feature during our presentation, which we'll try to answer directly. I've also got my colleague Jack standing by as moderator today. So Jack's been with the fund for 5 years and he's an account specialist like me. So he's out in the field providing super health checks to members from all around Queensland. So welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Gemma. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions throughout the presentation today. Thanks, Gemma.
Thanks, Jack. So yeah, like I said, we'll have some time for questions at the end and we'll try to get through as many as possible. We'll also be running some poll questions. So when the answer pops up on your screen, please just click the answer that's appropriate. And don't worry about taking too many notes because we'll send you a recording in the coming days. Before we move on to our main subject, I'll just touch on who Brighter Super are because we do have some non-members joining us today. The merger between LGIA Super and Energy Super, plus the acquisition of Suncorp Super, has enabled us to increase our size and scale, yet we remain committed to investing in the personalised member services that you know and enjoy. We now serve over 285,000 members with more than 33 billion funds under management. And we received double-digit returns for the balanced accumulation and the balanced pension options in the 2023-24 financial year. Now let's talk beneficiaries. So I'll start with estate planning. So an estate plan aims to preserve the maximum amount of wealth for the intended beneficiary and provide flexibility for the individual prior to death. This allows you to be in control of how you'd like your estate distributed to look after your loved ones. An estate plan can help you to protect your family and loved ones, optimize tax upon transfer of assets, and make sure your wishes are followed. Remember that your estate typically consists of everything you own, which are your assets, and then everything you owe, which is known as your liabilities. Superannuation can be one of those assets. It doesn't automatically form part of your estate because your super is held within a trust, which is managed by the trustee of your super fund. A death benefit is generally the amount of money in your super account, plus any insurances which you may hold at the time of death. Whether it's a little or a lot, it could go a long way in supporting your dependents after you've gone. Yeah, if you've already provided your nomination to Brighter Super, then this may expedite the process, which provides peace of mind for who your superannuation death benefit will go to. Again, it's important to note that a superannuation death benefit doesn't form part of your estate, and it's not necessarily paid as part of the will. If there's no valid binding death benefit nomination, then Vital Super will determine the distribution of the benefit, subject to the requirements of our trustees' governing rules and legislative requirements. In allocating a superannuation death benefit among the members' dependents, consideration is given to those dependents who might have expected to continue to receive financial support from the member. Where there's no nomination, Vital Super would generally pay a death benefit in accordance with SIS regulations and a trust deed. That said, the member's dependent or legal personal representative, which is also known as the LPR of the estate. Superannuation doesn't form part of the estate. So generally, Vital Super would only pay to the estate if none of the following existed. So a spouse, a child, a financial dependent, or someone you share an interdependent relationship with. So I'll touch on this in further detail in a few moments. In January, we're actually making some improvements to the way death benefits are paid, amending our trust deed to provide clearer guidance and speed up the decision-making process. So this is just going to help further expedite claims processes and minimize delays. Did you actually know that it can take 3 times longer to pay out a death benefit when you don't have a binding death benefit nomination in place? So you can now nominate a beneficiary at any time by logging into your member online. There's actually a tab headed Beneficiaries, which will provide you with your current nomination. It's important to review this to ensure it's up to date and valid, and it's especially important to review it if you've had a change in personal circumstances, just like a marriage or a relationship breakdown. Your current beneficiary nomination will also be detailed in your annual statement each year. On the slide, we'll just touch on a binding nomination. So binding nomination binds Vital Super to pay your death benefits to your nominated beneficiary or beneficiaries. So our members have told us what they want and we've listened, and you can now complete a binding nomination or a binding non-lapsing nomination online. You can also now select, a non-lapsing nomination, which means you don't need to renew the nomination every 3 years. Non-lapsing binding nomination doesn't actually expire. However, its validity will be assessed at the time of your death. So I'll touch on this in the next slide. With the binding nomination, you can change or cancel this at any time. Making a binding nomination puts you in control. So if you have more than one beneficiary, you can decide what percentage of the benefit each would receive. For example, your partner could receive 50%, and then your 2 children could receive 25% each. A binding death benefit nomination gives you certainty over where your money will go. It may be particularly useful, so if you have a more complex family situation, such as an ex-partner or even children of current and former relationships. All nominations could carry risk. So if your situation's complex, then you should seek estate planning advice. Now, on to our first 4 questions for today. Have you nominated a beneficiary? Waiting for those to come true. So it looks like most of you have, but there's a few of you out there who haven't. Okay. So you may have noticed that I've mentioned a few times that your nomination must be valid at the time of your death. So I'll just touch on who you can actually nominate as a beneficiary. Superannuation legislation dictates who can receive all or part of your superannuation death benefit. You've got the member's dependents and the member's legal personal representative, or LPR. A legal personal representative is the executor named in your will or the administrator of your estate. If you nominate an LPR to receive the super benefit, then your LPR will distribute the benefit according to your will. Under superannuation law, a dependent may include a spouse, a child, so this can include an adopted child, an ex-nuptial, a stepchild, or anyone who fits the definition of a child under the Family Law Act, any person who had an interdependency relationship with a deceased member, and any person who's financially dependent on the deceased member. So the definition of a spouse or child is outlined on the screen here. So I'll just delve a little bit deeper into who's considered a financial dependent and the definition of an interdependent relationship. So a financial dependent is someone who's wholly or partially financially dependent on the member at the time of their death. Now, this may include being reliant on a deceased for the payment of bills or rent, or even share financial commitments such as a mortgage. Documents proving the financial dependency would need to be provided to buy the super at the time of the claim. Now, with interdependent relationships, two people are in an interdependency relationship if they have a close personal relationship and they live together. One or more of them provides the other with financial support, and one or each of them provides the other with domestic support and personal care. In order for them to satisfy the criteria for interdependency, all four of these must be met. So what happens if you don't nominate a beneficiary? Now, if there's no valid binding death benefit nomination, then Brighter Super will determine the distribution of the benefit subject to the requirements of our governing rules and legislative requirements. This just means we look for dependents and determine how best to distribute your benefit. Death benefits are tax-free if paid to a dependent. So this includes a spouse, a child, anyone who's financially dependent on you at the time of your death, and any person who you shared an interdependent relationship with. A child is someone under the age of 18 years. So now that we know who is a dependent, it's important to review any tax payable on the death benefit. In most people's circumstances, there are two taxable components. So we've got the tax-free component and then a taxable component. The tax-free component are funds contributed as after tax as a non-concessional contribution. These contributions aren't taxed on the way into super as they come from a previously taxed source. An example is if you received an inheritance or the sale of an asset and then put the money into super. The tax component generally holds the greater portion of your super balance. So these are contributions made by your employer, salary sacrifice, and personal deductible contributions plus any earnings. These monies have been taxed concessionally at 15% on the way into super. If the benefit's paid to someone who's not considered a tax dependent, the taxable portion on your benefit is taxed at 15% plus the Medicare levy, if applicable. Should it be paid to your legal personal representative, the tax must be paid. So if you're planning to nominate your LPR, you should consider seeking estate planning or tax advice. The taxed and untaxed components are calculated at the time of payment. So generally everyone has taxable components in their super. The amount in each component will determine how this could be taxed when paying out the death benefit payment to a non-tax dependent. So I'll just give you a simple example. This case study illustrates the potential tax payable for a non-tax dependent. On passing, Jamie has a total balance of $500,000 and wanted to leave this to the adult child. This has made up the tax component of $400,000, which consists of the contributions their employer made during their life plus earnings. The potential tax payable is 17%, which equates to $68,000. This will be deducted and paid to the ATO prior to Jamie's adult child receiving the death benefit. The other $100,000 is tax-free and would pass in its entirety to the child. In total, Jamie's child will receive after tax, the total that Jamie's child will receive after tax is $432,000. You can find your individual taxable components on Member Online through the Benefit Quote tab. If you're concerned about your tax position, there are potential strategies for reducing tax on death benefits that our financial advice team can discuss with you. I'd suggest seeking financial advice for your own personal circumstances if you feel that these strategies may be of benefit to you. So later in the presentation, we'll just share with you how you can contact them. Now on to our second poll question. when did you last check your beneficiary nomination? Okay, so few different answers there. Most of you within the last 3 years, some of you within the last 3 to 5 years. So particularly within the last 3 to 5 years could be worth having a look. Because if it's a non-lapsing, oh, sorry, if it's a lapsing option, then potentially could have expired. And then a couple of you 5+ years ago, and some of you never. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple of different types of death benefit nominations. So today we're primarily focusing on binding nominations and reversionary nominations. So you may have heard of and nominated a preferred beneficiary. While this guides us at claim time, it doesn't provide certainty because Fighter Super is legally obligated to follow the trustee guidelines, which can include identifying all potential dependents before determining the actual beneficiary. This process can take time and it may not align with your wishes, and it may complicate things for your beneficiaries. With a valid binding nomination, you can gain certainty and speed up the process. The following slides will go through the types of nominations that bind the fund. We mentioned earlier that you can now nominate a binding non-lapsing nomination online. This also includes your LPR. Should you prefer to use a physical form, this is also available on our website to download. This form must be witnessed by 2 people over the age of 18 who are not nominated as beneficiaries. Everyone must sign and date the form on the same day. The form can have no errors, so don't cross out or initial any errors as the form will be rejected. If you make a mistake, you can print out a new form and start again. You can post or email us the form for processing, and the form can be downloaded from our website. Another important note is that if you're nominating more than one beneficiary, then the total of all shares allocated to each beneficiary must equal 100%. And remember to update your nomination wherever your circumstances change. The other option is a reversionary nomination. Now, reversionary nominations only apply to members with a pension account. This nomination can be done via a physical form or applying for a pension account through Member Online. The reversionary beneficiary nomination allows you to have your pension to continue to be paid to your beneficiary, generally a spouse, upon your death. You're also able to nominate a binding death benefit nomination instead of a reversionary beneficiary. A reversionary nomination is legally binding and doesn't lapse, and we recommend reviewing your reversionary nomination regularly just to ensure that it's still appropriate for your situation. Who you can nominate as a reversionary beneficiary is outlined on the form. So it's generally a spouse, although there's an option for children. However, this is age, financial, and disability dependent. Please refer to the form for all relevant options. You can also refer to the Fighter Super pension PDS for further guidance. There may be social security or tax implications for your potential beneficiaries when making a reversionary nomination. Financial advisors are able to help you decide how best to deal with this. Apart from seeking financial advice, we'd also suggest you seek independent estate planning advice. Lauren Chow from YHC Lawyers often presents in our face-to-face seminars where she speaks about the importance of wills and estate planning and enduring powers of attorney. YHC Lawyers details are on screen, and if you're interested in speaking about your situation, you can scan the QR code for further information. I'll just leave this up for a couple of seconds. Lovely. So what makes Fighter Super different to other super funds? It's our commitment to our personal service. We have a dedicated team of member account specialists here to support you, just like Jack and I. If you'd like to talk to one of our staff or one-on-one for more general information about your super, then why not book a super health check? Super health check covers a variety of areas and includes reviewing your beneficiary nomination. If you'd like to book now, there's also a QR code on screen, and you'll also receive a link to book a super health check in the coming days, alongside with today's webinar recording. Team services members all over Queensland with face-to-face services and with digital channels as well. So you can get some guidance on a range of superannuation topics, no matter where you live and work. We offer a range of personal advice options suited to members as well. If you're looking for something a little bit more specific, like making contributions or investments, our intra-fund team can help. So with this is a phone meeting with a financial advisor at no additional cost. Two of the most common questions members ask as they approach retirement is, how much super do I need? And do I have enough super? So this is where the retirement health check can help. We also offer both scaled and comprehensive personal advice services. This service takes a complete review of your financial situation to tailor advice to suit your individual needs. Now, with the comprehensive advice, this is a face-to-face meeting with our team in Brisbane and also various regions over Queensland, depending on where you live. The scaled advice is a phone appointment as well. So the cost is going to depend on the complexity of the advice given, and it may be deducted from your Brighter Super account, accumulation account, if you want it to. So it's never too early for us to start planning for retirement. So just have a chat with us and see how we can help. Similar to today's beneficiaries webinar, our seminar webpage does include a range of upcoming webinar topics, so keep an eye on this as we do update it regularly. And on the previous two slides, we have discussed our range of advice services. So these cover super health checks, intra-fund advice, and which I know are additional costs to our members. And we've got other things like retirement health checks and scaled, and then comprehensive advice, which are fee for service. So just onto our poll question. After today's webinar, are you planning to get advice? Had a few yeses. There we go. Now that's great to hear. Okay, so I've covered a bit of ground today. You can also visit the resources tab and then forms and info sheets. And that's just on our website, and that's got a whole bunch of information on the different forms we've discussed today and a lot of handy information sheets as well. Lovely. So we've tried to answer tonight the questions tonight through the webinar, but I'll just invite Jack to ask any or answer any questions we couldn't get to in the Q&A chat. So Jack, have we got any questions?
Thank you, Gemma. Great presentation. Just before I do answer some of these questions, I would like to remind everyone that this is general information and these answers do not take into account anyone's individual objectives or financial situations or needs. And again, it is important when making decisions about your super options that you obtain the relevant product disclosure statement and target market determination and consider your own personal circumstances. Now, most of the questions submitted, they were answered in today's webinar. We did just get one at the end from Paul, pretty much explaining that he does have a child living at home, still like doing tertiary studies, working part-time, still dependents up to that, age 25-year-old, I believe you asked. But look, if the child is above the age of 18 and is still considered to be dependent, then this can be something that can generally be provided when through the death claim. The fund would need to ensure that we can see that this particular person is a dependent at the time, even though they are over the age of 18. It's called an independent relationship. There is extra information about this on the ATO. Each circumstance is different. However, if the person can prove that they were still dependent at the time, the fund could potentially consider this as still as a binding beneficiary. Now, another question that wasn't answered as well, that was actually a pre-submitted question, is the person that I want as my beneficiary is not actually an Australian and lives overseas, and what difficulties may that person face, whether that be tax or otherwise, and what should happen if they receive the superannuation payout. Now, In regards to that question, each circumstance will probably, it does, generally speaking, each circumstance will change depending on where that family member may be. However, yeah, again, generally speaking, the main thing to remember is that all Australian superannuation funds will pay the death benefit to an Australian bank account. So from there, that's when it's up to the family member to do what they wish with those funds, whether that be keeping it in Australia or sending it to their bank of choice or their country of choice. And then that's where that can be subject to difference in currency rates and yeah, tax being payable. So generally speaking, when people find themselves in that sort of situation, it could be beneficial to see an estate planner or a financial advisor to get a plan in place just to ensure that that process is smooth and efficient for your relative. But other than that, like I said, all questions were covered off in today's presentation. So that is it for today, Gemma.
Thanks, Jet.
Oh, sorry, Gemma. Someone did just ask, is today's seminar available on a link for us to rewatch at our leisure? I do believe that this is being recorded and you guys will be sent a recording of the webinar once it's done.
Correct. No, thank you everyone for taking the time to come along and attend. And just one last poll question before we bring things to a close. So overall, how satisfied were you with today's webinar? No, thank you very much for all attending. You will get a link with the recording just after today. And yeah, we hope to have a chat with you really soon.